Thank you all for being here this evening. For those of you whom I don't know, I'm Carol White. I'm the President and Executive Director here at the Corning Museum of Glass, and it's my great pleasure to introduce this evening's speaker to you. You may wonder why we're doing this presentation in our amphitheater hot shop, and while I would like to be able to say it's because we can't get enough of hot glass, which is very true, it is also a fact that we are currently hosting the local student art show, which is one of my favorite events of the year here in Corning. So I would encourage you all to come back during our opening hours and step into the auditorium in the next couple of days and see what the youth of our community are achieving in the field of art. So on to this evening. Jeff Koons is known for working with subjects from popular culture and translating banal, everyday objects into fine art. Since the 1970s, his work has explored taste, consumerism, mass culture, beauty, acceptance, and the role of the artist. His output is prodigious, and I won't even attempt to mention all of the series of artworks produced by his fertile mind. Koons hails originally from York, Pennsylvania, about 190 miles from here. You might call him a neighbor of ours. As a budding painter at the age of 9, he painted copies of old master paintings, signed them Jeffrey Koons, and his father sold them at his furniture store. In 1972, he attended the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, where he continued to hone his skills as a painter. He graduated with a BFA in 1976, moved to New York, and began working at the membership desk of the Museum of Modern Art, where he quickly became notorious for his red hair and colorful outfits, as well as his impressive salesmanship. In 1980, he left MoMA and began selling mutual funds and stocks at First Investors Corporation and later at other financial firms in order to self-finance his artistic practice, and in doing so, to create the work he wanted to create. Koons rose to prominence in the mid-1980s as a part of a generation of artists who explored the meaning of art in a media-saturated consumerist era. The New, for example, is a series of vacuum cleaners and shampoo floor polishers displayed in clear plexiglass vitrines. The series was shown at the New Museum in New York City. In 1980, the vacuum cleaners carefully arranged as if they were in a showroom, encircling a red light box emblazoned with the words, "The New." His next series, called Equilibrium, included sculptures of basketballs floating in tanks of water that contained a careful layering of salinated and unsalinated water that enabled the basketball to float in the center of the tank. Around this time, Koons embarked on what might be considered his most enduring forms, larger-than-life stainless steel reproductions of inflatable animals. Building on work he'd started in the late 1970s, pieces like the critically acclaimed Rabbit, completed in 1986, that translated the design of an inflatable rabbit into a highly polished stainless steel sculpture. Technically ambitious, Koons's inflatables bring the rigorous craftsmanship of the best fine art to subjects like balloon animals that are accessible to all. In doing so, he positions art as a field that is open to everyone, rather than an elite few. Among his many honors and recognitions, in 2000, Jeff Koons received the BZ Cultural Award from the City of Berlin and the Skowhegan Medal for Sculpture in 2001. He was named a Chevalier of the French Legion of Honor in 2002, and then promoted to Officier in 2007. He was given the Wollaston Award from the Royal Academy of Arts in London in 2008. And this year, in 2017, he will be the first artist in residence at Columbia University's Mortimer B. Zuckerman Mind-Brain Behavior Institute, collaborating with scientists to explore themes common to contemporary art: memory, perception, and the stimulation of the senses. Glass has long been used as an element in Koons's work, and he regularly incorporates cutting-edge technology when achieving his artistic vision. What better place to combine the two than Corning, New York? Please join me in welcoming Jeff Koons to the Corning Museum of Glass.
Thank you. You know, it's really an honor to be here at the Corning Museum of Glass and to be visiting. What an amazing experience going through the museum, learning some of the history of glass, but it's so extremely informative. And so I feel like I have so many possibilities in the medium of glass just from experiencing the collection. But I'm honored to be able to be here and to give you a little overview of my life as an artist. I like to think, you know, how my journey in art started. And when I think back how I began, I come back to when I was 3 years old. And I remember making a drawing, and my parents came up behind me and they patted me on the back and they said, "Jeff, that's really good." And that was the first time that I kind of had a sense of self. I have one sibling, a sister, my sister Karen. And because she's 3 years older than I am, she could do everything better. She could jump higher and pronounce words better, count further. But finally, I could do something. And so I felt this, you know, sense of self. And that's really why I'm here today. You know, I continued to draw and to paint. I took lessons every weekend on my Saturday afternoons. And when it came time that I graduated high school, the only thing I was really prepared to do was to go to art school. So I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland. And the first day of art school, we got on a bus, the freshman class, and we went to the Baltimore Museum of Art. And it was that time that, in going through the collection, and they're known for the Koons sisters collection, but I realized that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Baroque. I didn't know Cézanne, you know, Matisse, possibly, you know. But I really felt that, you know, I realized that I didn't know I didn't come prepared. And I think that a lot of people don't survive that moment. I remember showing up to try out for football one time, and my father didn't play football with me, so when I went to try out, I was cut immediately because I didn't know anything about the game. And I realized at that moment that I wanted to create an art that would communicate to people that you don't have to bring anything to the table other than who you are at that moment. And that all moments of life are in this area, that you only have to be yourself, and it's all about that moment forward. There's nothing that's a prerogative. So that's really how I kind of started my journey. I went to art school. I eventually went to Chicago. I studied the School of the Art Institute. I had a mentor, Ed Paschke. And Ed is a Chicago imagist, and he really taught me that everything's already all around us, and that it's really, you know, if you have certain interests and you know, kind of look for these interests, you'll be able to find that everything's already around you. And so I started to become involved with the idea of the ready-made. And a lot of people will think of the ready-made and think of Marcel Duchamp and kind of absorbing it from a European version of the ready-made through Dada and Surrealism. But my first contact with it was through the Chicago Imagist and just seeing where they got their information. So I was always, as a young artist, I was, you know, painting what I dreamt the night before. I was involved with kind of subjective imagery. You know, I loved Dada and Surrealism, but something like Duchamp's idea, the ready-made, though, didn't come through kind of studying art theory. But at a certain point, I woke up and I realized that I really wanted more, that I felt that I learned how to trust in myself And once you trust in yourself, automatically you want to go out. You want to go outside yourself and experience the world. You want to become. And so I stopped painting. I always studied painting, and I started to make sculpture. And I started to work with ready-made objects, just things that I found in the world. This piece that we're looking at, this is called Inflatable Rabbit with Inflatable Flower. They're store-bought. I went out in the streets of New York and found these inflatables. And also the mirrors that they're sitting on, they're 12 by 12 inch square mirrors. I bought in a hardware store that they were completely pre-packaged just to, unpack and use in the decor of your home. When I made this work, I felt that maybe it still was, in a way, communicating too much about my own personal self, maybe sexuality or something, just through the heightened colors of the piece. But I realized that something was touching and it was more objective, and that hopefully this would have the same type of meaning to the viewer as it would to myself. And I love dealing with reflection, because I think when you're dealing with a reflection, it's kind of mimicking real time, but it's also a bending time. It's a different time. But in the abstraction that's taking place, when you would walk around a piece like this, the rabbit's reflected into the glass, the flower's reflected, but when you move around it, it's completely dependent on you. If you don't move, the abstractions, nothing's happening. But if you move, it's changing. And it starts to communicate to you that, art happens inside you, that's what the art is. It's about your own excitement, your own essence of your own possibilities. Art isn't something that's embedded within an object. An object is just a transponder. It's just something that can excite you, it can stimulate you, but that's not the art. The art is your own sense of your own potential. After working with some inflatables, I went on and I wanted to contribute something to the idea of the ready-made. I worked at the Museum of Modern Art. I was always in the architecture design department. And I decided that I would display objects for their newness. So I built these industrial display cases, and I would use just very kind of industrial showroom lighting. And I would buy a new vacuum cleaner, I would unwrap it, I would assemble it, and I would encase it right away and let it display its integrity of birth. Now, as human beings, we develop our integrity by participating, but an object has its integrity by non-participating of birth. So I was just dealing with kind of this confrontation between the organic and the inorganic, and who's really better prepared to survive. This is a triple-decker, and I heard that in Greek philosophy and Greek history that the more eternal something would become, also the smaller that it would become. And so the vacuum cleaners go from like a 10-gallon to, a 7-gallon to a 5-gallon. And it also reminds me of like a family unit. You could have maybe Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and a Baby Bear. If we would look closely at these vacuum cleaners, right here on the side, they say wet dry. And, I love Kierkegaard and Sartre, existentialism. And this is like either or, being and nothingness. And so I made these encased pieces and where these objects are displaying their newness. But I wanted to take my work and continue to make it a little more of a biological experience. Instead of something that's completely removed from the body, to have it be a little more internalized and more of a masculine type of view of maybe consumerism and of objects. So I created equilibrium tanks, and this is a one-ball total equilibrium tank. I made this in 1985. And an equilibrium tank, the basketball is hovering in equilibrium. It weighs, too much to go to the top of the tank, but it weighs too little to go to the bottom. And so these tanks, I wanted to create permanent equilibrium. And I worked with Dr. Richard P. Feynman, the Nobel Prize winner. And Feynman would tell me, "Oh, Jeff, you can do it. You can do it." And I'd say, "But I want to do it within the confines of an aquarium. And I also want to keep it really pure." So he'd have me look at all the compressible liquids and look at silicone oils and everything, and continue to encourage me. And I continued to work on it and to strive to have permanent equilibrium. But at a certain point, I realized that within these confines, I really couldn't do it and maintain the aesthetics that I wanted to. So I ended up just using water, pure water, and using a high-grade sodium. So the ball is actually sitting on heavy water, water that weighs like 1.3, and then the water at the top weighs 1. So eventually the ball will go to the bottom because the ions are mixing, everything's blending, and it'll become homogeneous. But it has the purity of a womb. And I wanted it to be womb-like, and to be a very metaphysical piece, to be dealing with time, the right here, right now, but also a sense of, the eternal tied to the past and to the present. This is a 2-ball 50-50. This is back to like either or, being and nothingness. And I've always loved the different type of optics that take place. And if we would move a little further around the side of this tank, this 50-50 tank, we would see that the balls are also being reflected into the side of the glass where the water is filled up halfway in the tank. So you get the same type of mirroring effect that we would have with the glass mirrors that I was using. Exactly half the tank is filled with water, exactly half the ball is submerged below the water. This is a 3-ball 50-50 tank. I also made 2-ball total equilibriums and 3-ball total equilibriums where they're all just hovering. But I always loved it when I would have like 3 balls, due to the light, the energy, even from the sunlight coming into the room, or due to the vibrations, people walking around, the balls are always moving. And one day you could have a configuration of all 3 balls over here, one side of the tank. Another day 2 could be here, and another one's over on this side. And it's a little bit like the beginning of thought patterns, a little bit like the creation of an artificial intelligence, the very beginning, just to the patterns that they move around within the tank. Now, when I made my equilibrium show, and I wanted the viewer to go into the gallery and see a 1-ball total equilibrium tank and desire equilibrium, and think, I would love that state, this state of pre-birth, like tied to the eternal. And at the same time, I would have Nike posters there that were like sirens telling you, go for equilibrium. I've achieved it. You can achieve it too. Go for it. And they were these basketball stars. That's Moses Malone. And it's like he's parting the Red Sea as Moses. And the balls are in equilibrium. And so if you desired, and the sirens would deceive you to go for it, they've achieved it, you could achieve it too. There were tools for equilibrium. And these are the first bronzes that I ever cast. This is an Aqualung. And so it's completely made out of bronze, but it was a tool that if you would put it on your back and go for it, it would take you under. And all of a sudden you may realize that, no, wait, I'm going to drown. And maybe you could get it off your back and resurface and, try to find salvation. And you would have been greeted by a bronze lifeboat. And that would take you right back under. And so it was really that there's no salvation. It's really about going for it. And, and so I was trying to make a body of work that was also having a dialogue with artists that, it's not about achieving an end result, it's about going for it. And that is kind of the end result, to strive for things and not make postures and gestures like we've achieved something, but let's really try to do something special. After having my equilibrium show in 1986, I did a body of work called Luxury and Degradation. And I was riding a train in New York City in the subway, and I realized that different economic areas, that due to the level of income, they would be targeted, their advertising and the level of abstraction used in that advertising was really tied to income. And so in a low income area, you would have liquor ads like a Cuba Bacardi. And so that I got the original plates that were used to make these ads, and I had these created into paintings. I treated those original plates as ready-mades, and I had these ads printed on canvas with high oil-based ink. So these were paintings for an exhibition. And I started off with this lower income ad, a Cuba Bacardi, and it's really dealing with abstraction as far as like chance and gambling and maybe taking your weekly paycheck and throwing everything up in the air on a Friday night. And to go along with an area of income, I also had a little stainless steel piece which was called Fisherman Golfer. It was a little bar kit that you had a swizzle stick and you had a strainer and a shot glass, different things. That was a cheaper object. And as we went up, I had paintings that would be having higher levels of abstraction being used to the viewer. And eventually, when we came to the middle class, I had the Jim Beam J.B. Turner train. And this is a train that's made out of 7 Jim Beam J.B. Turner decanters. Originally, they were made out of porcelain and plastic, and I cast them into stainless steel. This is the first time this body of work that I worked with stainless steel. And I was walking down Fifth Avenue, and I saw the Jim Beam J.B. Turner train in a window, and I thought, that's perfect, But how can I take this object and use it as a ready-made and maintain its soul? And I realized its soul was the liquor. So I acquired the train, and I took it to a foundry. We put it in stainless steel, and I contacted Jim Beam and arranged that they would fill it up with their bourbon, and then we'd put the tax stamp seal back on, and so it would maintain the soul of the piece. So as the alcoholic starts to consume more and more alcohol, and as degradation sets in, there's a kind of more of a dislocation of an intoxication and dislocation of imagery and ideas. Now as you go up in a higher income level, bottles start to become buildings. Now we're up to about a $30,000 income level at the time in 1986 that they would target people. This is the Empire State of Scotch Doers. It was an ad from the subway system that I made into a painting. As we continue to go higher up in the economic levels, this is a Baccarat crystal set. It's made out of stainless steel. When you really focus on things and you follow your interests and you focus on your interests, it always takes you to a very metaphysical place. And when I saw the train in the window the first time, I thought, I want this to be really an intoxicating piece, that you look at it and you feel the intoxication of the alcoholic, how they would desire this piece, how they want to run up and they just want to break that seal and drink it. And I thought it's stainless steel. Bring it to a high polish. It's a proletariat material. It's not a true luxurious material like platinum or sterling silver or silver, but it's a proletariat material. It has, you could melt it down and make spoons out of it and pots and pans. But I wanted the viewer to have that type of association of abstraction with it. This is at a higher level income. The Baccarat crystal set is now turned into stainless steel. And as we went up in our different levels of images, of income levels, eventually you come to the Frangelica Ads. And in the Frangelica Ads, which at the time in 1986, the highest level that they would target people were incomes $45,000 and up. But here, somebody's already lost in their own thought patterns, you know. They consume a lot of alcohol, and it's just, you know, they just think like stay in tonight. They don't even have social connections anymore. You can see the background's a little kind of sexualized. And so I was really trying to communicate to people to not pursue luxury, and that to maintain their economic and political chips, that luxury and abstraction can be used to, you know, to set you up, for debasement, that eventually they will get you at some point to come in at one swoop and just take everything. And that society, if you can pull yourself up from a $20,000 income or whatever to one of these higher incomes, you still have to really be very conscious of maintaining your economic and political power. I was paralleling the degradation of an alcoholic. Now, I've become accused of trying to sell luxurious objects, so I was kind of the messenger there that came back. So I went on, and then in 1986, I also made my rabbit. The rabbit's kind of considered an iconic image, and I think one of the reasons that it is iconic is it can mean so many different things to people. You could look at it and think of Easter, or you could think of an orator. You know, I have this microphone here at my mouth. That's almost like that carrot that the rabbit's holding. Could be an orator. Could be a symbol of masturbation. The carrot to the mouth. You know, it's an inflatable. As you heard, I grew up in Pennsylvania, South Central. There's a very large German population there, and our neighbors would have gazing balls in their yard. So if you look at the head of the rabbit, it's really a gazing ball. So I was also, you know, I was trying to inform people, because in 1986, I started working with Ileana Sonnabend. And Ileana Sonnabend is a really important woman that brought American art to Europe and brought European art to America in the late 20th century. And so I knew that my work was really going to be viewed by a lot of different people once I started working with Ileana. And I was trying to give an overview of my history as an artist working with ready-mades. And if you remember the first slide that we looked at, that pink rabbit, well, this is just another version of that. In 1987, I was invited to be in an exhibition called Münster. It's held once every 10 years in Münster, Germany. And this was going to be a very large exhibition for me. I'd be showing to a European audience, and a lot of prestigious artists are in this exhibition that Caspar Koenig, art historian, has every decade. And so Caspar invited me to Münster, Germany, and you're supposed to create a site-specific artwork. So I walked through the town, and I saw in one of the town centers, one of the centers, because it's a little diversified, this kip and curl. And a kip and curl is a man coming to market with a kip on his back. And it was in bronze, but the kip would be filled with a hare, eggs, potatoes, pigeons, everything that really shows the self-sufficiency of this community, through this agrarian community. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'm going to cast that piece in stainless steel and show that through this reflective surface, today, people feel that their needs are being met, you know, through other kind of symbols and images, and through this kind of false luxury that I can create in the steel will communicate that. When I made the piece, I worked with a foundry in Germany. They took the piece before it cooled, and they banged it up against the wall, the casting of the kip and curl, and they deformed the piece. So I had to decide whether to pull out of this exhibition, and because everything that we've looked at And everything that I've done to this time in my life is work with ready-made objects. And when I would make the casting of that Aqualung or the train or the crystal or show the vacuum cleaner for its newness, everything was to maintain the integrity of that object. And as you know, like Steve Jobs, all the attention that he would pay to the inside of the computer, that if you ever opened it, that you would respect that object. I was doing the same thing always with my objects, because I was using craft and paying attention to the bottom of a piece just as I would the tip of a nose of a piece, because I never wanted to let the viewer down. I always wanted them to be able to trust in that I cared about them. I didn't, care about the object, that I cared about them. So, but when I made the kip and curl and they banged it up against the wall and they bent the legs and they deformed the rabbit, it lost its ear, and the one shoulder was smashed like 5 inches in one direction, and a leg was totally shortened. I had to decide what to do. I decided to give it radical plastic surgery. And this went against everything that I've ever have done. I was always maintaining all the essence, everything, every detail of an object. But they brought in a great steel man, and this guy came in, and we worked on it for 3 months. He would heat it up that it was white hot, the steel, and stretch it and hammer it, and we'd weld it and polish it. And we put this kind of Humpty Dumpty back together again. And it was really it was one of the best experiences of my life, liberating experiences, because I realized that the object that I really cared about were people, and that was the ready-made, that everything is just a metaphor for people, and that I know that I've been working with images and I've been working with objects to try to communicate to people that they are perfect. And that whatever their own cultural history is, it's perfect. Everything about them's perfect, that everything's about this moment forward. That was the ready-made. So I immediately stopped working with objects that pre-existed. I went on, I made my banality show. This is a wooden sculpture. I went to southern Italy and northern Italy and southern Germany and worked with the craftsmen in wood in Oberammergau and Valley Gardenia. And we carved a piece like this, ushering in banality. Now, I would create this out of a montage of different images that I would see in magazines and postcards and different things, and put these things together and create these objects. I used wood to try to communicate a spirituality of transcendence, that wood's a living material. The church uses wood to communicate transcendence. I also worked with porcelain, and I created a piece like this, Woman in the Tub. Porcelain's a material that at one time came from the king's kitchen, the emperor's kitchen, and only the king, emperor would have porcelain. But in the 20th century, porcelain became completely democratized, and we can all have porcelain. We have porcelain in our bathrooms, we can have porcelain plates, we can have porcelain knickknacks, but it's a material that's completely democratized. And I wanted to celebrate that, because I was trying to communicate to people that, again, anything that you respond to, anything you like the color pink for pink, that's fantastic. If you like an object like this, a little knickknack, my grandparents had an ashtray, and it was a woman reclining, and it was only about this big, but she was lying down, and her legs were up here, then they would swivel, and you were supposed to be able to put your cigarette there, and the heat of the cigarette would make the legs go back and forth. But when I was 3, 4 years old, I would look at this thing, and I was mesmerized. And, I'd play with the legs. She also had a fan here. And so that's really, I think, my takeoff on that in creating a Woman in the Tub is making a reference to that ashtray. But you can think of Manet's Woman in the Tub, all the Degas pieces, and Duchamp's urinal. Another piece in the banality show was Michael Jackson in Bubbles, and I wanted to create a contemporary kind of Christ-like figure that I could try to communicate confidence to people that it's okay. It's all right to embrace yourself and to give it up to banality, and that the things that you like, it's all right. There is no hierarchy that you have to match up to, or anything that's required other than just who you are yourself, what you respond to, what your interests. You're perfect just as you are. It's from this moment forward. Now, of course, this is on the same type of composition of the Pieta, and I think it also has an aspect of King Tut, the type of coloring and the heavy makeup and eye makeup. After Banality, I went on and I made a body of work called Made in Heaven, and this is a marble bust of myself and my ex-wife Alona, and it's in the position of the Hunan sculpture called The Kiss. And so I thought it was kind of a very bourgeois piece. But I just wanted to make a very Baroque sculpture. And I was trying to use the body and the acceptance of the body, again, as this metaphor for acceptance. A lot of people can't accept themselves. They can't accept their own sexuality. They can't accept even the idea of kind of procreation, how nature works. And I was just trying to bring things back to a basic level of self-acceptance. Because once you accept yourself, then you can accept other people. And if you think about subjective art as accepting the self, objective art is being able to accept other people. That's the highest state that you can go. Art cannot take you to a higher state than to accept other people, the opening yourself up to everything. After the Made in Heaven work, I really was involved with the Baroque and looking at the Baroque, and I looked at it for many years while I was in Europe. So in 1991, I created Puppy, and Puppy's a large sculpture. It's 42 feet tall. It's made out of 60,000 live growing plants, and so there's 60,000 decisions. And I think the beauty of Puppy, and I think what people like about Puppy, is that they're able to pick up that the piece is about control and giving up control. And each plant is a decision, but after these decisions are there, certain plants are going to shoot 100 centimeters further in this direction. Other plants want to dominate their territory and move over in this direction and take over another species of plant. And you just walk away and it's in the hands of nature. And it's the same in life. We have to exercise control. We have to try to direct our lives that we can be as beneficial to ourselves and our family and community as much as possible. But there are other points that within relationships, there's just no area for control. This is a balloon dog. I made a body of work in 1994 I started called Celebration. And the balloon dogs from that body of work. I wanted to make a work that was, archetypal, and at the same time would be very, very accessible. And so I think that the balloon dog represents something that is kind of tribal, and I could think of a community, creating something like a balloon dog back in archaic times, even from working like with intestine or something, looking at their kill and noticing that the gases are kind of increasing and the intestines are starting to get larger. And they could make something like this that for some kind of ritual aspect. But it has this sense of community and ritual, I think, around it. And it has a sexual quality about it, too, the tail and the different folds. This is a piece called Playdoh that's also from the Celebration series. I have a son named Ludwig, and whenever I would visit Ludwig, My son lived in Italy. He was abducted through a parental abduction when he was very young. So I'd always take him toys and Playdoh and all these different things, videos when we would meet. So we were together, and I brought him some Playdoh, and he was playing on the table, and he said, "Dad." And I said, "What?" And I looked over, and he created this mound of Playdoh in front of him, and he had it right here, and he went, "Voila!" And I looked at him, there's the mound of Play-Doh, and he's like this, and voila. And I thought, this is what I try to do every day of my life, to make an object that you can't make any judgment about, that there's no, hierarchy, there's no, segregation, there's no discrimination, it's all acceptance, that everything's perfect. So I went back to my studio, and I made this mound of Play-Doh. But I ended up taking the mound and enlarging it, that this piece is, it's about 10.5 feet in all dimensions. It's made out of aluminum, and it's 25 separate organic shapes that all fit on top of each other. So it's a little Freudian in a way that, it's, the way these pieces stack up, it has kind of an organic aspect to it, but at the same time, it's like a de Kooning painting or something. I really think it captures an essence of the 20th century. This is Moon. This is another piece from the Celebration series, another very, very highly reflective piece, a mirrored surface. That's about 10.5 feet in diameter. It's like a celebration balloon. This is a piece called Lobster. This is from my Popeye series. And, lobsters are made out of aluminum. But I always loved that it's both masculine and feminine. And in Greek culture, the highest form of beauty is when both sexes are together, the masculine and the feminine. That's really how beauty is defined by the Greeks. But if you look at the lobster, it's got its tentacles there, and they can be quite masculine. It's like Salvador Dali or Marcel Duchamp, putting the mustache on the Mona Lisa, LHOOQ. And the arms are a symbol of masculinity. But if you look at the tail, that tail at the top, it reminds me of Gypsy Rose Lee, or like this type of feather that maybe a dancer would be using, kind of a burlesque aspect to it, or even a womb-like quality. But I also like to think that that's the fate of anybody that stays in the public eye for, too long or long enough. Eventually it has a very medieval quality to it. It's like being burned at the stake, Just the graphics on this lobster. This is another piece from Popeye. This is called Dog Pool Panties. And Marcel Duchamp made a piece called The Standard Stoppages, where he'd take a string and he threw it down on the ground, and then he glued it on a board, a panel. And so the board panel has an odd shape to it. It's kind of like this glass panel that goes across there. And there's a photograph mounted in between two panels of glass where I have a woman stretching panties for the symbol of the string. And this is a dog pool. So it's masculine on the outside, the dog pool inflatable's balding, and you can see as the tail up in the back, but the whole interior is feminine, the pool area. This is a piece called a Dolphin, or actually this is called Pot Rack. The pots are underneath it. Again, I was thinking of like Marcel Duchamp's large glass where you have all the bachelors in the bottom part of the glass. I thought of those pots and pans as the bachelors, and the dolphin as the bride. I started to, after the Popeye series of work, to start to work with CAT scans and working with really high resolution white light scanning to make my works. Earlier in my career, I would make molds of objects. I would get an inflatable, maybe that dolphin, make a mold of it, a rubber silicone mold, and then go through different processes to cast it. But I started from making some of my balloon sculptures to realize that I was losing so much time trying to bring back the kind of authentic quality that the original objects had, where I couldn't capture the information through the white light scan. So I started making CAT scans, and when I do the CAT scans, I'd have all the data there. This is a knot from a balloon, and that knot comes from my balloon Venus. It would have come from an area, right up here at the top of the head. But I was able to capture everything, and now instead of taking me 10 years to make an object, I could make it in 18 months, because I would spend so much time working with the different computer technicians, and they would show me, okay, here's the fold. We couldn't get that through the white light scan, but we created what we think that fold did. And I would look at it and say, well, I don't think a fold works like that. I think that would, maybe turn under here, and this would go back and forth, and eventually years would go by until I could complete an object. But now I would have everything exactly the way it is, that would be objective, so that when somebody viewed a piece, they could trust in it. This is a takeoff of the Venus of Willendorf as a balloon object. It's one of the oldest Venuses, 24,000 years old. These are large balloon animals that I've done. I made the balloon dog, and these are the other 3 animals that I've done. I made a swan, which is the blue one on the end. When I first made this piece and I looked at the computer data on the screen and saw it straight on, I had an epiphany. And because it looked like a totem. It was a totem, this very strong kind of phallic shape in front of me. And then when you walk around or you look at the side of the piece, you realize all the sexual harmony. It's completely feminine on the sides. And again, we're back to the definition of Greek beauty, of both the masculine and feminine together. The object in the center is a rabbit. It's a monkey. That always reminded me of Picabbia's portrait of Cezanne, the cover of Cannibal magazine, where he would have this monkey, this kind of stuffed monkey, and then it would say portrait of Cezanne, portrait of Renoir, and it gives a sense of chaos to these sculptures. They're not so architecturally created. And down on the end is a balloon rabbit. The balloon rabbit has the same angles of Nefertiti, the sculpture. So if you look at the ears going up very high, they're 14 feet high. They come down to the tip of the point. It's the same type of angles of the tip of Nefertiti's nose. And then, of course, the jewelry around Nefertiti's neck is like the legs at the bottom. This is a piece called Diamond. I'm showing this is part of Celebration because it wasn't for me when I made it about bling, but it was about the moment of creation. And the 4 posts that are on this diamond are a symbol of male energy. And one already got in, and it got into the egg, and all the facets of life are unfolding. So as far back as you can go in human history would be to this point. And that would really kind of reference our truest narrative of human history, our genes and our DNA. And through this piece, I started to go on and make paintings such as this from the Antiquity series. And with the Antiquity, I was trying to deal with all the cultural ties, how cultural ties are linking one person to another through respect for each other, through the humanities. All these interconnections are also paralleling our internal life, our genes and our DNA, how they're also cultural linked, and how our cultural life can change who we are. We know that through ideas, through the creation of synapses, we become a different person. We have gene expression. This is a piece in Antiquity called Metallic Venus. Metallic Venus is made out of stainless steel. Everything's brought to a completely mirrored polish. It also incorporates a live plant. That's a live plant there, but it's making reference to Praxiteles and his work, even though he never created anything exactly like this. That work would be 100 inches tall. This is a piece called Pluto and Proserpina. This is installed in Piazza Signorina in Florence. This was the first time a work in 500 years was installed there, beside Michelangelo's David, and on this other side is Donatello's Judith and Holofernes. But as the sculpture that I have here, Pluto Proserpina, is this bright reflective yellow, so was David and Judith and Holofernes. If we look over here at the David, this tree stump here, that would have been gilded in gold and polished. The strap that he has, slingshot type strap, is also would have been gilded at one time and when it was installed 500 years ago and polished. This is a piece called Seated Ballerina. And Seated Ballerina is a stainless steel piece, and it plays on gradations. And my interest in time and dealing with metaphysics through all my work, I think you can look back through the use of reflectivity, and we can think of the tanks, but reflection automatically gives a different essence of time. It has the right here, right now, but at the same time, it starts to bend time. But a work like the ballerina has gradations here, where here you'll have a greater density of paint, then it'll get thinner into a lighter color, and then a greater density. And here in the blue, you'll have a lighter blue, then it'll go into a darker blue. As soon as you have a gradation, it's all depicting time because of our relation to sunrise and sunset. And the sky is always a form of gradation. So it's another way of dealing with metaphysics. Again, I would like people to look at the work like the ballerina and see their own reflection, feel their own affirmation about their own being, that this is about them. This is about their own potential, their own interests, whatever those interests may be. Somebody could be interested in physics. It's about the excitement that they may have just within themselves, the stimulation of their desire to continue to go on and pursue physics. This is a piece from my gazing ball sculptures, and all the gazing ball sculptures are made out completely, 100%. Everything is a plaster. It's a special plaster I made with George Wheeler from the Metropolitan Museum, so it's very, very durable. It's stronger than marble, but it looks exactly like pottery plaster, and they all have a gazing ball, so they reflect the viewer, and they give a sense of high kind of stimulus, through the senses, through sight, and your senses are stimulated, but also the pieces, these objects, are reflected into that gazing ball too. They become affirmed. And when they become affirmed, they kind of fall into the shadows of themselves, and you go into Platonism. So you have these kind of two realms of the eternal. You have the biological realm of life leapfrogging, and you have the realm of ideas. I also think this mailbox, this is like a rural mailbox, but it reminds me of somebody that's younger. They're kind of all revved up. They, kind of getting an essence of life, and they want more, And so from that, you kind of go on and you start to realize, wait a minute, there's not just me in the world, but I have my family, and I have this local community around me. This is called Row of Mailboxes, and that's what it is. It's a rural row of mailboxes, but it's kind of starting to develop an essence of that other people, and that you have a responsibility to yourself to become, but to be able to help your community and participate in your community. And as you go on and on, I would go from these utilitarian objects then into some of these really classical masterpieces of the canon of art history. This is the Farnese Hercules. And so maybe, before that was maybe one individual talking about transcendence, and then a dialogue within this kind of local community of parents and family and local friends. And now this could be like, this room right here, all of us having a dialogue about transcendence and, what we can become. I also then, after making the gazing ball sculptures, I made gazing ball paintings. And so I would take, and those pieces were, ready-made objects that I would cast into plaster. But here, I would get very, very high-res scans of the original paintings, make exact duplications of the paintings, and then mount an aluminum shelf in front of the painting and put a gazing ball. So it reflects you, the viewer, and then the painting's reflected into the gazing ball. And it's like a rabbit's hole in a way. You go into the painting. And then when you're in the painting, you're really dealing with the idea of Manet, but now you're dealing with who Manet gave it up to. And you're dealing with time. You're dealing with metaphysics again. Now you're dealing with Manet giving it up to Rambaldi's drawing of Raphael's The Judgment of Paris. And Raphael giving it up to Giorgione's, pastoral concert. And that's how we achieve transcendence, is by finding something greater than ourselves and giving it up to that. So this whole series celebrates that. This is The Tiger Hunt by Rubens. Rubens is giving it up to Leonardo da Vinci. This composition, this kind of X configuration is from Leonardo's The Battle of Angahari. And Leonardo's giving it up to Uccello. Uccello's The Battle of San Remo. And so Rubens was able to become Rubens through Leonardo. And, hopefully I can become a better artist, through Rubens. Everybody's about giving it up to something else outside the self. And then hopefully you can take responsibility to also inform and give to people around you and go into the future through, future generations. This is the Mona Lisa. This is Leonardo giving it up to Uccello and Masaccio, Pier della Francesca. So, I'm so thrilled because one of the reasons that I'm here, I've been able to speak with Corning Inc., and I've been working on a project to be able to make a work like we are looking at here, the Mona Lisa, the Tiger Hunt by Rubens, but to be able to make these in a flat form, that I could make a print and I could develop a glass, that I could have this cobalt blue, and that I would be able to have a very high reflectivity, but not feel the presence of an object being mounted on top of the print. And so it's been wonderful to be here, to have a dialogue, to speak about the possibilities of doing this, and to work with the team. Jeff Evison has been absolutely fantastic in having this dialogue. And I've been working with Christine Heckel. And, I also really want to just thank everybody, the whole team underneath you, to be able to be working and have a dialogue and hopefully be able to bring this about, that to be able to create something new and I think very, very stimulating, and to share the ideas with people about their own potential, because that's what this work wants to do, is to stimulate the viewer so that they can really come in contact with the essence of their own potential. So I really want to thank everybody, and I really would love to be open, and if anybody has any questions, I would really like to, have an open question and answer. All right. Okay.